everyone, I'm Liz Darren from the Career Center. I am going to be presenting to you virtually today about your job search and what that should look like at this point in your senior year. I'm going to walk you through the entire process from beginning to end. Overall, the process of job searching and applying to positions and interviewing and accepting offers has not changed with everything going on. However, there are going to be some differences, namely that more things are being done virtually. And so I'll touch on that as we go through this presentation. There are 4 different phases of a job search that I'm going to go over today. The first is creating your advertisement. Then you go into actually searching and applying. Then you are given the chance to state your case of why you'd be a good candidate. And finally, there's the phase of accepting an offer. So when we talk about creating your advertisement, what we're really talking about is developing a resume and a cover letter that markets your skills and abilities and experience as it relates to the position that you're applying to. In this case, many times you do find yourself feeling a little repetitive as you're applying to different jobs. This meme I thought was perfect to sort of demonstrate that, in that sometimes you are being asked to upload your resume and then also filling out an application that's literally saying all the same things about your resume. And then, they also want your LinkedIn profile. And all of those are mainly giving the same pieces of information. So sometimes it can feel a little repetitive and that you're doing a lot of different activities that sort of are the exact same thing. But essentially what you're doing is you're communicating to the employer about why you're qualified for the position. And what's really critical is making sure that you have a really strong resume. I know that you have done resumes before, you have taken the INT class, you've probably met with someone in our office, most often it might be me. You may have gotten feedback from faculty or from professionals in your industry, including internship supervisors, and that's all really great. And so hopefully all that information has given you some great guidance in creating a resume that really reflects your skills and experience and why you're a good match for the position. And I think what's really critical to understand is that under all of that are some foundational pieces that you always do. And so sometimes you'll get feedback and it will conflict. You might hear from some person that you should have your education at the top. You'll hear from others that you should have education at the bottom. And in reality, they're both correct. It really depends on the situation. So if you find yourself getting sort of conflicting feedback, I always say just make sure to ground yourself in these 5 different areas that make up the word saint. So it has to be skimmable. So no matter how you decide to format your resume, it has to be easy to read and easy to skim. Employers don't look top to bottom, left to right when they read a resume. Their eyes really, go all over the page looking for the information that they're looking for. So they might be looking for somebody who's had an internship in their field, or they might be looking for somebody with a particular major. And if that's the case, then their eyes are going to look for that information. They're not necessarily reading from top to bottom. So the way that you use bold and italics and underlines will actually have an effect on whether they're able to get the information that they're looking for. After that, it has to be accurate. Your resume really should be, it needs to be something that's honest and reflective of your true experience. And 9 times out of 10, that's everybody's intention. Unfortunately, sometimes inaccuracies do get sort of accidentally put on a resume. And it's not typically somebody meaning to do it. So you have to really be careful of things like if you're a double major, you're not receiving 2 bachelor's degrees. So you wouldn't put a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science and Bachelor of Arts degree in English communication on your resume. It would just be a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science and communication, or English communication. It's 1 degree, that type of thing. If you transferred from another school, say you did a year at another college before coming to Emmanuel, you would not have that college listed on your resume unless you completed a degree there. So if you have the school that you transferred from on your resume, it's implying that you've actually received another degree. Things like employment that's seasonal. So if you have on your resume a summer job and you list it from 2016 to present, that looks like you've been at that job for 4 solid years. Instead, you'd write summers 2016 to 2019. So it's little things like that that you are always, sort of translating your experience for an employer, and you want to make sure that information is accurate. The best way to make sure that you're doing it correctly is to have your resume reviewed by somebody in the Career Center, because we're able to go and look through it and say, hey, did you get a degree from that place, or were you there for 4 years? We ask those probing questions because we're looking at it from a recruiter's set of eyes. So we know how they're sort of reading it, and we'd be able to ask any clarifying questions of you that will help make sure that whatever you put on there is accurate. After that, it's really important to know that individual ownership is you. So the center of all of this is that you get to make the decisions on your resume. So you're going to be the one who decides whether you're going to put education at the top or education at the bottom. There's a reason to do it one way and a reason to do it the other way. Ultimately, this document should be reflective of who you are, and it should be reflective and accurate in a way that you're going to feel comfortable sitting across somebody in an interview asking you questions. Many of those questions will come from what they're reading on your resume. So you never really ever want somebody else to write your resume for you, or somebody else to make a decision on how to format it. When you come and work with me in the Career Center, I'm going to tell you the reasons why you do it one way and a reason why you might do it another way, but ultimately you get to decide, because you need to be confident and feel good about this resume. The next is pretty obvious. There should be no errors on this resume, and it sounds easier than said, easier said than done, I should say. It is very easy to make a mistake. It's very easy to have repeated words or spelling or spacing or formatting. They're on every resume, frankly. So unless you have your resume done multiple times and reviewed very carefully, it's very easy to make a mistake. And from an employer's standpoint, your resume is a sample of your best work. And if your best work has errors in it, then that's how they think you're going to perform on the job. So it's really critical that you have that person, ideally your career advisor, go through every sentence, every word, every format, every space on your resume to make sure that you're really putting forward the most polished document possible. And finally, it should be targeted. And this is the part that students do less frequently. So depending on what your experience is, you may reformat your resume so that you're enhancing one internship over the other if it's the internship that relates the most, or if it's the job with the most transferable skills. And there's some tricks we can do with formatting to make sure that that top third of your resume has the most critical and most related information to the position that you're applying to. If the most related experience you have is 3/4 of the way down your resume, then you are possibly oftentimes risking an employer not getting all the way down there because they don't read the whole resume. So if they don't see related experience within those first couple of positions, or at least transferable experience, then it's going to be very likely that they will skip to the next resume in their pile. So once you've done your resume, you've followed these guidelines, you've had it reviewed by your career advisor to make sure that you're meeting all of these 5 different areas, the next thing to really think about is your cover letter. And your cover letter should be written for a particular position. So I frequently say to students, don't worry about your cover letter right now. Worry about your cover letter when you're about to apply to a real life position. Don't try to make some generic just to get it started type document, because it will end up reading very generic when you go to use it. So what you want to make sure that you're doing is you're actually finding a position that you want to apply to, which you can see here on the left, and then you write a cover letter to that position. And when you're reading that job advertisement, you want to be looking specifically at the words that they're using. So here you can see at the bottom, we have bachelor's degree required, right? So then we're going to want to make sure that in that first paragraph, it says that you're pursuing a bachelor's degree. It says this person needs to have interest in media and advertising. Well, then the passion for the industry is part of that first paragraph. As you go through, this position requires familiarity with digital marketing and social media. Well, then that's the first thing that should be in that second paragraph. During my time as a social media intern. So you're connecting the words in the cover letter the words in the job advertisement with your cover letter. And there's a couple of reasons to do this. One is because it makes it much easier for the employer to see why you're qualified for the position. So if you look on the left, this is what they have written. So this is what we know they're looking for. So by all means, you want to make sure that you're calling it out that specifically in your cover letter. The other reason is because larger organizations who get a lot of applications oftentimes use keyword functions when they're searching for applicants. So you may have applied to a position, and that position may have gotten 500 applications. So they will, instead of reading every single one of them, will do a keyword search. So they'll look for the word social media, or they'll look for a particular software. So you want to make sure that you're aligning your words so that if they choose to use some of the keywords from the job description, they will pull in your application. So now you have completed your cover letter and you've completed your resume. You want to make sure that you are developing a very robust search. And that search is meaning that you are using all sorts of pieces of information. It will feel very frustrating as you start to read some of these job advertisements that say that they want 1 to 2 years experience. You will rarely come across anything that says you don't need any experience. So most of them are going to say that. And that's where this sort of frustration. How do I get the experience before I get experience? So what I encourage you to look at is when you're looking at these positions, if you've had an internship, which all of you have had, you can really put yourself at that 1 to 2 years experience, especially if you were very involved on campus, if you gained other professional skills from part-time work, your 4-year college education, plus those extracurricular things that you've done, and experiential learning things that you have done, all add up together to be 1 to 2 years experience. The only caveat is if the job description specifically says 1 to 2 years post-graduation experience, or 1 to 2 years professional experience, or something along those lines. But if it just says 1 to 2 years experience, you're within that category. So as you're starting to think about where to find these positions, it's really critical to remember to use a variety of different methods. So students who choose to only rely on one method will find themselves taking longer and longer to find a position. Your job search should be a variety of things. The huge part of it should be really networking, using LinkedIn, talking with faculty, talking with the people in your life, going back to your internship sites, networking with people on site, asking for people for informational interviews, really, enhancing your search with having conversations with people about what you're searching for, and the kind of work and the kind of things that they do as part of their professions. The next biggest part of that is actively applying to jobs online. So that is searching job boards for postings, reading the job description, writing that cover letter, making sure you're qualified. It's really critical to do a good assessment about whether you're qualified for a position before you apply. If you apply to jobs that you're not qualified for, you will not get an interview. And what will happen is if you apply to 25 jobs and you're not qualified for 15 of them, you're going to feel yourself that you've done a lot of work, but you haven't gotten any interviews, and you're not sure why you're not moving along the process. And the reality is that if there are things that are required of you or of a candidate and you don't meet those requirements, do not apply to the position. If it says it's required that you have a master's degree, do not apply to that position. Those are the screening things. So those are the things they're telling you. You will get screened out if you don't have these requirements. Now, there's other parts of the job description that says if something is preferred. If it's a preferred qualification and you don't have it, you can apply. You will not be a very strong candidate because they are looking for people with those preferred qualifications. That said, the best and most strongest application you can put out there is for a job where the description, you meet not only the required points of the job description, but you also meet the preferred qualification. So if it says preference of having an internship in a political campaign, and you've had that, you are a really strong candidate. And that's what you're looking for. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to apply to only ones where you hit preferred qualifications, but you want to make sure that you're applying to those ones because that's where you're going to be the strongest candidate. The other part of this, of course, is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is an enhancement of your resume. It's a networking tool. It's a job board. You can connect with people after you have applied to a position. You can use LinkedIn to search for alumni within the organization that you may have applied to, and then reach out to those alumni to say, hey, I've applied to a position within your organization. I'd love to have a conversation with you about, what you enjoy about this organization and what your typical workday looks like and any advice you'd have for somebody trying to enter the field. They will help to advance your application if you're able to make those strong connections. And then finally, it's other career activities. That can be going on informational interviews, going to career fairs, going to industry events, and different employer panels and that type of thing. And this is where things have changed a bit. So we are seeing these move to virtual formats, but they are absolutely still existing. So recruiters whose jobs it is to recruit and hire people, if their positions are still out there and they're still hiring for them, they're just moving to a virtual format. So instead of going to an in-person networking event, they're providing drop-in info sessions. Phil Beekman from the State Department, for instance, one of our contacts, just held drop-in hours last week for two hours last week, 2 different times. So that's what we're seeing them do more and more. And so, making sure that you are following up with employers after you've applied, following whatever, events that they're doing virtually. On Hire Saints, we do have a list of virtual events on the homepage, so make sure to take a look at that. We're adding to it every day. But these things still are going on. In terms of informational interviews, you can still do those via the phone or through, a Zoom meeting. You want to still be engaging, even if it's in a more virtual format. So some of the places that you can go to take a look at positions, of course, Hire Saints, which is the largest, screen here on the screen right now, and that is the homepage the job posting page. And one of the things that I want to point out is the arrow is pointing to the create a job alert function. So once you do a search in Hire Saints, it could be a keyword search, or you're searching just based on full-time employment or whatever it is that you put in as your search criteria, make sure to create a job alert by clicking that button. What that will do is it will email you anytime a new position gets posted that matches your search criteria, and that helps to keep you in the front of jobs being posted. You're always going to have more success with jobs that are just got posted than jobs that have been up there for a month. Because those that are still posted and they've been up there for a month, or 2 weeks, or 4 weeks, or 6 weeks, or whatever it may be, they're probably well into the hiring process. They're probably already interviewing candidates. Now, if they are still posted, you should still apply to them, because sometimes we get what we call a failed search, where we get all the way to the end and we offer somebody the position and they decline, and then we have to start all back over again. And that's when they'll go back into the applicant tracking system to see who else has applied since they started their search. So it is still worth applying, but it's just better to apply to jobs where they just get posted, because you know that you will be in the front of that consideration. Idealist.org also does allow for creating a job alert, saving a search. It's either called Create Job Alert or Save Your Search or whatever it might be, and then set up that daily email. The one thing in Hire Saints to know is that after you click on Create Job Alert, that will automatically create it, but then you actually need to go to the link above it that says Job Alerts. Click on that and just make sure that everything is moved to daily, because it defaults to weekly, and you really do want to get an email immediately. You don't want to wait a week before you find out that something has been posted. So once you've started applying to positions, very early on, if you're doing a productive job search, you should be absolutely getting interviews within the first 2 weeks of applying to jobs, 3 weeks, especially if you're definitely applying to jobs where you know that they've only recently been posted. So if within the first 3 weeks or so you're not getting interviews, that's a good time to check in with your career advisor and just make sure that your search is sound, that you're applying to positions that you're qualified for, that your resume and your cover letter look good. You don't want to go 2 months of applying to jobs and not getting any interviews to call us, because there's something going on if you're not getting interviews. So this next phase of your job search really is when you get a chance to either over the phone or virtually through an in-person interview, you are getting an opportunity to state why you are a good candidate for this position. It is really, really crucial to your success to prep for any interview with your career advisor, because we will walk through every single point of the job description and prepare you for why you're a good candidate. We will come up with the stories and the different things that you should be sharing as part of the interview process. But this is the phase of your search where you have to make your case. This is one of the more uncomfortable spots of a job search, because we are really, really humble and taught to be not boasting about ourselves and all those things. And in reality, this is exactly the time that you should be talking about why you're so great. And frankly, that's what they want to hear from you. So it is uncomfortable, but you can get better at it and more used to it the more practice that you have. So the 3 phases of any interview process, which we could do a whole different presentation on interviewing, but I did want to give you these sort of 3 touch points. Number 1 is that preparation. So understanding who you are, why you're a good match to this position. Fully understanding the position itself. I cannot tell you how often the mistake gets made where students have not fully understood what they're applying to. It's really hard to understand the job fully. You've never worked at this organization. You've never worked professionally. You're kind of making some guesses, but you do have a job description in front of you, and you do have the ability to do research. And that's where you need to put just as much effort into preparing about figuring out who you are as it relates to the position, as it is the time you should be spending actually really fully understanding the position and the organization. A really easy way to bomb an interview is for the interviewer to ask you a question, what do you know about us? Or why do you want this position? Or any other related sort of question that's getting at what do you know about us? And you say, I don't know, or I'm not really sure, or you answer something that's completely off base, it's a very quick way to bomb an interview. Know your industry. Know where this organization fits into the larger umbrella of your industry. Obviously, do your research on the profession, the job, the company, but also the person who's interviewing you. Go on to LinkedIn, see what their background is. And then always, at any point that you can, prep with your Career Center, do a practice mock interview, especially now when you're talking about working through different software, whether it's Zoom or Google Hangout or WebEx, or these different softwares that are now being used to connect virtually for interviews. Doing a mock interview with us will help you also test your setting, your lighting, give you a chance to practice with the tool ahead of time so you feel familiar with it. And those are all really critical things as well. Second step, obviously, is the participation. It's the same stuff, it's just virtual. So you want to be professionally dressed. You want to arrive on time. You want to enter that virtual meeting room 5 minutes beforehand and have tested your technology an hour beforehand. You want to exceed these professional expectations. You want to be able to answer 3 very basic questions. You might not get these exact questions, but basically every job interview is trying to figure out, do you have the skills and experience we're looking for? Do you seem like someone that would be a good asset to this team, a good fit for our organization? Are you somebody who we can teach and you're going to retain that information? So be ready to answer those. They'll get asked a whole variety of different ways, but that's the bulk of any interview that they're trying to get to. And then also don't underestimate the power of managing the interview yourself. So if you have something that you want to provide for information and they didn't ask about it, at the end of your interview, by all means, you can say, you know what, before I ask my questions, I actually was hoping to share this experience that I had. Would you mind if I shared a story about this? Everybody loves that. That would be a fantastic way to get across your most sound qualifications. And then finally, make sure to use examples and stories. Everything you answer, you want to be able to back up with some type of example so that you're really enhancing these answers with things that help them to really picture you on the job. The final stage of that interview is the follow-up. So sending a thank you, knowing what their timeline is for hiring so that you know when to, or fulfilling the position, so you know when to follow up. Follow up within a reasonable time frame. If they say, well, we're doing our first interview rounds this week and second interviews next week, we'll hopefully be making decisions 3 weeks from now. Well, don't follow up at the end of the first week because you know they're still working their way through candidates. So figure out their timeline. That will give you the information you need to know when to follow up. Some additional tips on answering interview questions. There's 2 types generally of interview questions, behavioral and open-ended. So behavioral questions are things like, tell me about a time when, or give me an example of, or what's your biggest accomplishment? They're really trying to draw stories out of you. Whereas open-ended questions are much more open-ended. So tell me about your strengths. Why do you think you're the best candidate for the job? How do you manage your time? What's a weakness? Those are open-ended questions where you could talk and talk and talk and talk. So ideally for any one of these questions, whether it's behavioral or open-ended, you're providing an answer and also stories. So for the open-ended questions, you'll start with your skills and your attributes. So what are some of your strengths? Well, I've got really great organization skills and I'm a great presenter and I do great speaking in public, okay? Then you want to follow it with a story. For example, when I was an admission ambassador, I actually had to go through and give tours. And so then you give an example of a time that you demonstrated that strength. On the flip side is behavioral. Tell me about a time that you had to, manage a challenging person. Well, actually, as an admission ambassador, this one time I had this parent who had a lot of questions for me that I couldn't answer, so I had to do X, Y, and Z. Then you want to back it up with the attributes. So what I really learned about myself through this process is actually I'm somebody who I know when to elevate an issue. My communication skills are excellent, and I'm actually really great customer service because I was able to make that parent really happy. That's just off the top of my head example, but the idea is that you're always sort of adding those two things together. Some things that just to mention that we know that a lot of interviews have moved virtually. There's essentially two types of video or virtual interviews. One is what we call one-way interviews, and the other is what you would think traditionally of a video interview. So a one-way interview uses an actual software. Some examples are InterviewStream and HireVue. And this is software that the employers actually purchased and have probably been using as part of their interview process for a long time. And what that does is they actually send you pre-recorded interview questions. So you watch the interviewer ask the question, and then you record your answer. Most of the time you can redo it, or you can watch it, or you can pause after one interview question and go get a drink of water and come back and sit back down. But essentially you're recording your answers back. If you get one of these interviews, you get a lot of directions on how to do it from the interviewer. So there's a lot of support that you get to complete these interviews, but that's one way of a virtual interview. The other one is what you'd probably more likely think of, which is a Zoom meeting or WebEx, Google Hangout, FaceTime, any of those types of virtual in real time type interviews. What the employer uses is going to be an unknown until they invite you for an interview, but we can prep with you for any one of these softwares except for HireVue. So we have InterviewStream that we can actually run a mock simulated recorded interview session with you, and then we can practice through Zoom or WebEx or Google Hangout or whatever the format that they have selected might be. A couple of quick tips for these types of interviews. Number one, always make sure to know what the backup plan is. So if your system fails or if you're not able to get through, is there a phone number I should call? We've been hearing from employers that they are happy to have you just FaceTime them if you're having some major issues. But what they really want to see is if you're having technical difficulty, that you pursue it all the way to the end. So you call them on the phone, you are troubleshooting, you don't just disappear, because that's what a lot of students end up doing. They kind of it doesn't work for them, and they're like, well, I guess I can't do it anymore then. And that's not what they want. They want you to call them on the phone, figure out a workaround. They're even happy if you're having a lot of technical difficulties. Many are saying, we'll FaceTime if needed. They want to go through more, web-based interview sites first before going like something like FaceTime, where they might have to give their personal phone number. But they are definitely very, very supportive. And the recruiters that we're talking to are like, we're just trying to get this done just like everybody else. So know that, if there are any technical difficulties, that you will have somebody on the other end who's really more than willing to troubleshoot with you. And finally is the phase of accepting an offer, which is actually, a series of points. It's not just one thing that you do. But typically what ends up happening is you will get a call and they'll say, we really loved having you come by and we're really excited to offer you the position, and this is what the salary is. And here are some benefits. And my always suggestion, and it's a practice I do myself as well, is you say, thank you very much. I am so excited about this. Can I have 24 hours to think about it? And they will always say yes. Ideally 24 hours, 48 at the most, but you want to give yourself time to breathe, time to think, and time to come up with the series of questions that you have for them. So when is the start date? What are the benefits? Will I be in an office? What's the travel time? The things that you didn't fully get answered in the interview process that are going to be, indicators of whether you take the position, by all means, this is the time to ask. So you call them back and you ask all those questions. And this is the point that you would negotiate salary. So on that call back to them would be when you would state your case of why you think you should have a higher salary. You have to have a reason behind it. It's not just because. So, to call back and say, again, thank you so much for this offer. I'm so excited about this. I do have a few questions. You'll run through your basic questions. And then your final question will be, I understand, the salary is $42,000. However, because I've already worked on a campaign before, or because I've already, my internship was very, very similar and we did a lot of the same work, I was hoping to be closer to, and then you name your number back. But you have to have that reason for why you might command a higher salary than the person next to you. They are either going to say yes or no. They're not going to rescind the offer. They're not going to say, you know what, forget it. Actually, we're going to go with somebody else now. That's not going to happen. They have invested way too much time and energy in getting you as a candidate. And the worst thing they say is no. And then you know. But what sometimes happens, and I know I do as my own practice, is you're given a range of what you can offer somebody. So your HR department says you can offer somebody anywhere between $43,000 and $46,000. If I have a candidate that I really like, I'm not going to give them the whole amount. I'm going to give them $45,000 so that if they come back with a salary, I will be able to do something for them. Now, that's not a standard practice, but a lot of people do that. If there is a range, usually we don't offer right at the top. Or if they do, they'll say, we actually offered you as high as we could. I always leave a little room for negotiation, which can oftentimes mean that you're leaving money on the table if you didn't engage in a salary negotiation. So it's always wise to do. It's also something that we can walk through together in real time. You don't have to do this all on your own. You call me up, or you call your career advisor up and say, hey, I have this offer, this is the amount, I want to negotiate, I don't know what I should do, how should I handle this? And we will coach you through every single step, which I have done many times before. Once you do agree and you have that verbal over the phone, they say either yes, we can offer you a little bit more, or no, I'm sorry, we can't, but you know you're going to accept it. You say, thank you, I really appreciate you trying to figure out whether that was a possibility, and I'd really love to go and accept the position. And they say yes, yay, everybody's excited, and you hang up the phone. But the one thing you want to know before you hang up the phone is, when can I expect an offer letter? That is a piece of information written down that tells you exactly when your start date is, what your salary is, your benefits, all sorts of information. So you always want to have that offer letter in hand. That's your official acceptance. So you should say, when can I expect an offer letter? And they will say, we'll email it over to you later this afternoon or early next week or whatever it may be. Now, when you're actually fully employed, so say 2 jobs from now, you never want to quit your job until you have that offer letter in hand. That is just standard practice, because nothing is official until you have it in writing. So make sure you get that offer letter in writing. That's when you get sort of a last look at everything, but you've already accepted, so you oftentimes they have you sign it. Not everybody does, but you want to get something in writing that says, yes, I am coming. Here is my salary. This is what I'm doing. I am now an employee of you. Once you have accepted an offer verbally over the phone, even before you get the offer letter, once you verbally say, yes, I am taking this job, the good news is your job search is done. You do not continue to interview at other places. You do not continue to apply to other places. Your job search is done. Pat yourself on the back. You now have a job. There may be other jobs that you have been interviewing with. And again, in real time with your career advisor, we can talk about how to handle that. If they're jobs that you don't want as much as the one that you've been offered, then you politely reach out and you say, thank you again so much for the chance to interview for such and such position. I want to let you know that I've accepted another offer and I would like to withdraw my candidacy. That is a standard operating procedure for stopping applications from going any further, and it's professional and it's respected. What's not respected is if you continue to interview at those places and then either ultimately say, actually, I've already accepted something, or get another offer and then go back on the offer that you accepted. That is a big no-no. You do not want to do that unless there's very specific circumstances to do. And, just because I got a better offer is not what we're looking for. You really want to make sure that when you accept an offer, you realize that you have committed to something. And if you go back on it, you are really risking burning a bridge with that organization. And people move all around, and it's just not something that you want to do. So once you've accepted, you're committed, you pat yourself on the back, you celebrate, and you acknowledge the process that you just went through. I really want to make sure that it's clear. I know this is a lot to be going through right now. Senior year is stressful enough without everything that's been going on. So I just want to make sure that you know that the Career Center is here for you. We have been meeting virtually, as you can see from this screenshot. We have been meeting virtually with students. We've been meeting virtually as a team. We've been meeting virtually with employers. Our work has continued. Our support for you has continued. And this is a time where you really want to just be able to connect with us and say, hey, what should I do about this offer? Is this good? Should I negotiate? Or, I've got another interview. What should I do? We are here to support you. We will answer all those questions for you. I really look forward to supporting your search as you go through the next few months, and I look forward to having some appointments and further conversation with all of you.